All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we mark Human Rights Day. Nearly 80 years after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, its promise remains essential. Yet civic space is shrinking and serious violations persist, showing disregard for dignity and suffering. In his message for the day, the Secretary General underscores that the UN works every day with partners to help people access their basic rights, from food, shelter, and education to peace, equality, and a healthy planet. But safeguarding rights requires action from everyone, everywhere. And in a press conference today in Geneva, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said that human rights are underfunded, undermined, and under attack, yet they remain powerful, undeterred, and mobilizing. A groundswell of activism, especially by young people, is pushing back against injustice and demanding dignity, equality, and accountability. He added that their courage reminds us that universal rights still inspire action and that defending them is essential to our shared future. The Secretary General arrived in Riyadh today to start his official visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. A few hours after arriving, the Secretary General met with the Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. The Secretary General commended the long-standing UN-Saudi partnership and support to multilateralism. The Secretary General and the Crown Prince also exchanged views on a range of regional developments and an analysis of the current geopolitical situation. On Thursday, the Secretary General will continue his visit to Saudi Arabia, which will include meetings with His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and a special encounter with His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz, the Minister of Energy. This morning, the Security Council held a briefing on Afghanistan. The Deputy Special Representative and UNAMA's officer in charge, Georgette Gagnon, told Council members that the situation of Afghan people demands both urgent attention and greater international support. Women and girls continue to be systematically excluded from almost all aspects of public life, she said. Media freedom is increasingly restricted, but she added the deteriorating human rights situation is not the only crisis affecting the Afghan people. She highlighted how the return of nearly 2.5 million Afghans from Iran and Pakistan this year, often under duress, represents a 6% population increase and is compounding the deep-rooted economic, climate, and humanitarian crises the country already faces. As the de facto authorities continue to prevent UN female staff from accessing UN premises countrywide, Ms. Gagnon called on the support of council members to ensure the situation does not become normalized. Turning to the issue of tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan, she welcomed efforts of countries in the region to find a solution through dialogue. She also urged the parties to address the core issues and for both sides to respect the ceasefire in place. For his part, Tom Fletcher, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, said overlapping shocks, restrictive policies affecting women and girls, the long-standing impact of decades of conflict and chronic poverty, and massive funding cuts have left Afghanistan in a severe humanitarian crisis. Despite limited funding, he said that we and our partners have continued to deliver, but as we reach the end of the year, underfunding has forced service closures, resulting in scaled-back assistance to millions. Ultimately, that has cost lives. Mr. Fletcher concluded his briefing with 3 requests from the Security Council. He asked them to continue to support the implementation of the humanitarian exception in Resolution 2615, to insist that women humanitarian staff can do their jobs without restrictions, and to fund the humanitarian appeal. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our colleagues with the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that with another winter storm hitting the Strip, low temperatures and rains are putting vulnerable groups at particular risk. That includes newborn children, for whom hypothermia is extremely dangerous. The UN and our partners have targeted efforts to deliver assistance to communities living in flood-prone areas, including by scaling up the distribution of winter clothes for children from 5,000 to 8,000 kits per day. Today, our partners leading winter preparedness efforts report that some 200 families from shoreline communities are expected to arrive at a new site identified by municipal authorities in what remains of Hamad City in eastern Khan Yunis. These households made the decision to move, given the impact of the frequent rains and the risk of flooding in their previous location. The UN and our partners, along with member states, continue to distribute tents, tarps, bed sheets, and winter clothes to families in urgent need of assistance. Work is also ongoing to mitigate flooding by reinforcing high-risk areas with sandbags, as well as emptying storm drains and clearing solid waste. Meanwhile, our partners leading efforts to improve access to education report that about 65 classrooms, previously used as shelters for displaced people, have now been cleaned and prepared so that learning activities can restart there. However, our partners warn that education materials remain blocked from entering Gaza, disrupting efforts to help children resume their studies. In the ongoing effort to improve food security, our partners report that so far in December, 260,000 people have received regular food assistance, which, as we mentioned earlier this week, consists of 2 food parcels and a 25-kilogram bag of flour, through 60 distribution points across the Strip, including a new site in Beit Lahiya in northern Gaza that opened last week. Given the importance of animal husbandry for food security, some 3,500 veterinary kits entered Gaza on Friday for the first time since August. Since then, the UN and our partners distributed the kits and animal fodder to over 100 herders and donkey owners. Meanwhile, security incidents continue to be reported in Gaza, posing a risk to civilians, including our humanitarian teams. Just yesterday, we received reports that 2 bullets hit the ground floor of UNRWA's Maghazi Health Center in Deir el-Bala, located near the so-called Yellow Line. Thankfully, no casualties reported. Yesterday, UN peacekeepers in Lebanon, who were in vehicles patrolling the Blue Line, were fired upon by Israel Defense Force soldiers in a Merkava tank near Sarda. One 10-round burst of machine gun fire was fired above the convoy, and 4 further 10-round bursts were fired nearby. Peacekeepers asked the IDF to stop firing through UNIFIL's liaison channels. Both the peacekeepers and the IDF tank were in Lebanese territory at the time. Fortunately, no one was injured. The IDF had been informed of the location and timing of the patrol in advance, following usual practice for patrols in sensitive areas near the Blue Line. Attacks on or near peacekeepers are serious violations of Security Council Resolution 1701. In this very sensitive situation, we call on the IDF to cease aggressive behavior and attacks on or near peacekeepers who are working to rebuild stability along the Blue Line. Turning to Sudan, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said it is deeply concerned by the sharp escalation in violence across the Darfur and Kordofan regions, where a surge in drone attacks is increasingly exposing civilians to harm. In Darfur, multiple drone strikes in recent days have killed and injured civilians. On Monday, strikes reportedly hit the towns of Kutum and Kabkabia in North Darfur State. Local sources indicate that in Kutum, 2 civilians were killed and 10 others injured. The same day, in South Darfur State, drone strikes reportedly targeted areas in and around the state capital, Nyala, as well as in the town of Katala to the southwest. In Kordofan, the reported takeover on Monday by the rapid support forces of the country's largest oil field in the town of Heglig in West Kordofan State has forced more people to flee and has deepened humanitarian concerns. Many families are now being displaced for a second time. In South Kordofan State, the International Organization for Migration estimates that 185 people fled the state capital, Kadugli, yesterday due to heightened insecurity, relocating to areas across the localities of Abu Zabad in West Kordofan and Shekan in North Kordofan. The situation remains tense and highly fluid. Once again, we stress that attacks on civilians must stop immediately. All parties must protect civilians, respect international humanitarian law, and facilitate safe, sustained, and unhindered humanitarian access. Meanwhile, people displaced from El Fasher continue to arrive in the locality of Tawala in North Darfur. Yesterday, our partners received some 400 newly displaced people at the Kurma entry point. Those arriving had moved multiple times in search of assistance and described robbery, looting, and gunfire along the route. The UN and our partners are scaling up humanitarian aid, but needs far exceed available resources. At the same time, IOM reports that natural hazards have displaced more than 35,000 people in Sudan this year, including as a result of floods and fires, adding yet another layer of hardship for communities already uprooted by conflict. OCHA calls on the international community to urgently step up support and ensure life-saving assistance reaches those who need it most across Sudan. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is deeply concerned about the rapidly worsening humanitarian situation in South Kivu since December 2nd. This, as you are aware, is due to intense fighting across multiple territories, including Uvira, Walungu, Mwenga, Shabunda, Kabare, Fizi, and Kalehe. Our humanitarian partners report that more than 200,000 people have been displaced across South Kivu, and at least 70 civilians have been killed during the current escalation. Most displaced families are sheltering in overcrowded sites, facing heightened protection risks and the threat of disease outbreaks. The violence is severely disrupting food assistance. WFP has been forced to suspend its activities across the province, cutting off 25,000 people from life-saving food assistance. Host families already facing emergency levels of food insecurity are sharing the last of their food with displaced people. At least 32 schools supported by WFP in Uvira have suspended classes to provide shelter to displaced families. This has disrupted the school meals program and is leaving more than 12,000 children without what is often their only hot, nutritious meal of the day. WFP and our humanitarian partners plan to support newly displaced families as soon as conditions allow. But food stocks in Uvira are expected to run out within weeks due to high needs and lack of funding. The humanitarian impact of the crisis is now spilling across borders. Between December 5th and 8th, nearly 25,000 people crossed into Burundi, including Congolese nationals, Burundian returnees, and third country migrants, with additional arrivals also reported in Rwanda. In Burundi and Rwanda, our humanitarian partners, together with authorities, are scaling up assistance, including hot meals, safe water, and health services. This escalation is further aggravating an already critical humanitarian situation in eastern DRC, amid a severe funding shortfall. The DRC Humanitarian Response Plan is only 22% funded, leaving a gap of nearly $2 billion, while in Burundi, less than $33 million has been mobilized against a requirement of nearly $77 million. We call on all parties to the conflict to immediately cease hostilities, uphold international humanitarian law, protect civilians and civilian infrastructure, and ensure safe, rapid, and unimpeded humanitarian access. Turning to Ukraine, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that intense hostilities in frontline regions continue to cause widespread destruction and prompt the evacuation of residents from high-risk areas. According to the latest report by the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, civilian casualties rose significantly in both frontline and urban areas between June and November, with a 37% increase compared to the previous 6 months. In Ukraine's east, the Donetsk region has been among those hardest hit. Local authorities report that since the start of December, more than a dozen civilians have been killed and nearly 60 others injured in Ukrainian-controlled areas, with the towns of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk especially impacted by attacks earlier this week. With the support of UN agencies, national non-governmental organizations have promptly delivered emergency assistance to affected residents, including shelter materials to cover damaged windows and roofs, as well as psychosocial support and protection counseling. Amid mounting security concerns, more families are leaving high-risk areas in the Donetsk region, either on their own or through government-led evacuations, which are being supported by humanitarians. Local authorities say that since August, nearly 72,000 people, including almost 8,000 children, have fled the Donetsk region. Aid organizations are supporting civilians fleeing the fighting at each stage of their journey, from leaving their home communities to transit sites and providing support at the destinations hosting them across Ukraine. Our humanitarian partners report that in the frontline region of Zaporizhia, some 500 people have been evacuated over the last 2 weeks. National NGOs have opened an inclusive interim evacuation point to provide comprehensive support to people with disabilities and limited mobility. The project received funding from the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund, which is managed by OCHA and continues to support local frontline responders in helping those most in need. At yesterday's pledging event for the Central Emergency Response Fund, 40 donors pledged contributions of just over $300 million to support life-saving action by the UN's Global Emergency Fund in 2026. Several others are expected to make contributions in the coming months. The Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, thanked partners who pledged their support, stressing that a fully funded SURF at $1 billion each year is not symbolic. It's a lifeline that's needed now. Donor announcements at last year's event total some $351 million. The drop in pledges for 2026 reflects the increasingly dire financial outlook facing the humanitarian community as it continues to grapple with the steepest funding cuts in its history. So far in 2025, SURF has allocated $435 million to support millions of people who need urgent assistance in over 30 countries and territories. And throughout its 20-year history, the fund has helped hundreds of millions of people with nearly $10 billion in more than 100 countries and territories. A programming note for you: the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and the UN Foundation will co-host this year's Global Humanitarian Policy Forum, which will take place tomorrow and Friday here at UN headquarters. Now in its 14th year, this year's forum will center on the theme Protecting Principles, Norms, and Values. It will bring together UN officials, civil society leaders, and academics, among many others at the forefront of today's crises. Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Tom Fletcher will take part in a panel tomorrow afternoon, which is called The Frontline, Protecting Civilians and First Responders. You can watch the forum on Web TV, and more of the information is available online. As global funding cuts intensify and basic services collapse, humanitarian needs for children continues to surge. Launching its Humanitarian Action for Children 2026 appeal today, the UN Children's Fund is seeking $7.66 billion to provide life-saving support to 73 million children in 133 countries next year. Announced and anticipated funding cuts by donor governments are already limiting the agency's ability to reach millions of children in dire need. Severe shortfalls in 2024 and 2025 are forcing UNICEF to make impossible choices. For example, across UNICEF's nutrition programming alone, a 72% funding gap in 2025 forced cuts in 20 priority countries. In education, a shortfall of $745 million has left millions more children at risk of losing access to learning, protection, and stability. UNICEF urges governments and donors to increase flexible, multi-year financing, support local partners, uphold humanitarian principles, and ensure access to children in need. 4 remarkable individuals and a frontline organization have received the UN Refugee Agency's 2025 Nansen Refugee Award, which honors individuals, groups, and organizations who go beyond the call of duty to protect refugees, as well as internally displaced and stateless people. This year's winners include a village chief in Cameroon who helped integrate 36,000 refugees, the founder of a refugee-run school in Tajikistan, a women's organization in Iraq reaching 105,000 conflict survivors, a business executive in Mexico who helped hire hundreds of refugees, and frontline responders in Ukraine who stay put when others depart. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi says that the winners embody the spirit of Nansen, a belief that every person forced to flee, wherever they are, deserves dignity, safety, and hope. The names and bios of the winners are online. And tomorrow, my guest will be the World Food Programme's Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean region, Lola Castro, who will join us from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, to discuss the response to Hurricane Melissa across the Caribbean. Are there any questions for me? Yes, Edie and then Deji.
Thank you, Farhan. Venezuelan opposition leader Ana Maria Machado was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize today. She was on her way to Norway but didn't arrive in time, and it was accepted by her daughter. President Maduro has said that she would be considered a fugitive if she left Venezuela to accept the award, which she apparently has. Does the Secretary General have any comment on this basically decision by the Venezuelan president and on her awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize?
As you're aware, the Secretary General welcomed the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to Ms. Machado, and the sentiments we expressed at the time that she was given that award still apply. We believe that any threat to Ms. Machado for winning or receiving the Nobel Peace Prize are unacceptable. And there should be no threats against her or indeed against anyone working to support the cause of human rights in Venezuela. Deji?
First, to follow up on the incident happened on UNIFIL. You mentioned about the Nansen mechanism, and the UNIFIL asked Israeli side to stop firing. Has that communication worked?
In this incident, the incident that happened, obviously, as we said, shots had been fired, and then we did turn to the liaison mechanism. After that, it's been resolved, and there was thankfully no one injured. But this is still a significant violation of Resolution 1701, and these sorts of attacks, as you know, have been going on for some time now, and they need to stop entirely.
Has this liaison mechanism, let me put it this way, has Israeli part explained a little bit why they are firing above the UNIFIL? If there is any mechanism, I think that should be like the question you have to ask. Right?
We inform the parties in advance of our movements, especially when we're in sensitive areas. And the Israelis were informed of this movement prior to that. You would have to ask them why they proceeded
But have you
with their
asked
actions.
them?
Yes, of course.
And do you think it's intentional or not?
What we would say is, regardless of what actions they take in sensitive areas of Lebanon, this sort of behavior is not acceptable, and it has to be stopped.
Okay, another question here in the UN headquarters. Today, I think all of us received this email about the removal of paper towels from the restrooms. Does the UN have any numbers? How much can this saving cost?
We'll have to see how that is. Part of what this is also, as you know, an environmental measure. We are encouraging people to use the air dryers to clean themselves, which has less of an environmental impact.
Which consumes more energy, electricity or paper?
The idea is we were trying to save on the wastage of paper.
And wouldn't it be great if you have getting rid of this? Why don't you just getting rid of also napkins?
I'm sure that anything that's regarded as a sensible proposal will be considered. Yes, Abdulhamid.
Thank you, Farhan. I'll put my questions, the pieces of my question in one. Today, Israel attacked also UNIFIL at the Blue Line. And UNIFIL issued a statement probably an hour ago. They kidnapped a Syrian from near Dara. They announced building 800 settlement units in the West Bank. A settler overran a foreign national in Hebron who came to express solidarity with the Palestinian people. All these, and 3 people were killed in Gaza, which you didn't mention, just 3 hours ago. So put all this together. What kind of an entity this is called Israel? Why, if it gets away with all these atrocities, it's committing day in and day out, without condemnation, it will do it again and again and again and again.
Well, these are many different strands, but certainly all countries, including Israel, have to abide by international law. As you know, when it comes to settlements, we are against any settlement activity, including in the West Bank, and any killings of civilians have to be thoroughly investigated.
My second question.
Yes.
In southern Yemen, the Southern Transitional Council has been acting as if the South is separate completely. 7 days after the taking over of Hadramaut, which is, I think, it's the largest governorate in South Yemen. So things are changing in Yemen by creating a new entity supported by United Arab Emirates. What is the UN position on these developments?
Oh, well, as you know, the Secretary General is himself in the region. He will be traveling to Oman as well as Saudi Arabia, which is where he's at right now, and we'll be discussing these particular developments. Certainly, from our perspective, we want to make sure that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yemen is upheld. Namo.
Thank you, Farhan. I have two questions. The first one is on Afghanistan. Today, the Security Council heard that the Taliban's ban on women working for the United Nations is preventing life-saving aid to women and girls in the country. Tom Fletcher called these restrictions unacceptable. But in practice, what does unacceptable exactly mean? What is the United Nations or the Secretary General prepared to do? Thank you.
We have brought this to the attention of the Security Council and want to make sure that that there are no holdups in terms of being able to provide all of those in Afghanistan who need aid to have the aid that they need. And as you know, both Georgette Gagnon and Tom Fletcher spoke out against also the restrictions against female aid workers, and this is another action on which we want the Security Council's support.
Shouldn't you declare the suspension of your operations in Afghanistan or relocate to another country?
There's so much need in Afghanistan that we have to make sure that whatever actions we take care of those people who are in the greatest need. So we're calibrating our responses to make sure that on the one hand, the unacceptable actions that have been taken by the de facto authorities are responded to by the international community, and on the other, that those in need still get the assistance that they deserve.
My last question is on Syria. It was reported today that Kurdish residents in Damascus were prevented from waving the Kurdish flag, celebrating the overthrowing over the outside of the Assad regime. What is the United Nations message to the Syrian authorities on this? Thank you.
Our only real message is that we believe that all communities have the right to have demonstrations, including celebrations, the way that they see fit. And of course, regarding the first year anniversary of the fall of the Assad regime, you saw the statement that we issued on Monday. Then Pam Falk.
Thanks, Farhan. Has the Secretary General or anyone from the Secretariat reached out to the countries that are in most, have the highest arrears before the budget is passed? Has there been any diplomacy to try to get some of that paid? And do you have any indications that any of it will be? Thank you.
We are always in touch with our member states to make sure that they are aware of the need to pay their arrears. As you know, the payment of dues is a treaty obligation, and you're well aware of how Article 19 of the Charter works in that regard. But yes, we're in touch with them. Okay. Islam.
Farhan, thank you. I have a couple questions. And first question is, the Israeli Supreme Court gave the Netanyahu government an extension responding to the petition about barring the journalist going into the Gaza. And this is the ninth extension. What is United Nations comment on this?
Comment is the same as has been throughout the last 2 years. We want there to be full access to journalists to Gaza. Obviously, anywhere in the world, reporters need to be able to go about their work without hindrance.
And second question is about the winter situation in Gaza. Reportedly, there's need like around 300,000 tents and tarps suitable for winter. Do you have, in your best knowledge, do you know like how many tents or tarps has been distributed? And also, in terms of the screening before entering those humanitarian aids into the Gaza, do you get like any difficult times by Israeli authorities regarding those tarps and tents?
We've had blockages in terms of getting some aid in, and we've been reporting that to you. But certainly, tents, tarps, bed sheets, and winter clothes are all items that we are distributing with along with different member states. And we've been giving you those numbers periodically, but certainly that is an ongoing part of our efforts, especially as winter comes to Gaza. Magdalena.
Hi, Farhan. If we could just go back very briefly to the paper towel situation. I know you said it's an environmental measure, but is there anything about the finances that you would be able to talk about? I know they said it's $100,000 that you'd be saving, so like what else might that money go to, or I don't know, any comment around these cost-cutting measures?
Well, part of the reason we have to have the savings, it's not about the money going to other things. It's that we need to have our basic functions continue. And as we've had a lack of reliable funding for many years now from member states, we have to respond in different ways. And so that's where the savings go. Yes, in the back.
Thank you, Farhan. I have a question on the UN personnel detained in Yemen. Is the UN seeking any third-party mediation to get their release?
We are in touch with a number of nations, including other concerned countries, trying to get their support for the release of our 59 people. Yes. Yes, please.
Is the visit of the Secretary General of the United Nations to Saudi Arabia is related directly to the escalating situation in Yemen and Sudan together?
Those are some of the situations that are of concern as we are proceeding with his travel. Yes.
Does he have any specific message to them?
You've seen the messages that we've put out from here about those conflicts and about the concerns we have, and those are the sort of concerns that he will also express with his interlocutors. Abdul Hamid?
National Security Minister in Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir, attended recently a meeting, it's on December 8th, for the committee to pass the death sentence for Palestinian POWs. And he was wearing a pen here, which is shaped like a noose, or the death robe. This ultimate expression of fascism passed without condemnation, neither by the UN, nor by European Union, nor by anybody. Why?
I'm not aware firsthand of what this person was wearing. What I would say is, of course, we stand against any violent or racist rhetoric by anyone. Have a good afternoon, everyone.